Hello, people. I will be your substitute teacher for the day. Our teacher was not able to make it today. But anyway, he's here. He's in the back. He got a new haircut and he was embarrassed to come in front of the class. So I will be forced to teach the class for today. What did we learn last week?
Judges.
Did we?
We did.
We did. We did. What else? Yes, sir.
Was it Joshua? Was it on the-
Yes, we said something about Joshua. That is absolutely correct. What else? All right, so we can't do this because we have a lot to get through today. So here's the thing. Hopefully, so far, unless you're new, you're kind of understanding where we are. So we're telling one story. It's not like we're not telling multiple stories. We're telling one story about how you got saved. And this is the process that God used in order to come to this world to save us. Remember, that's very important. This is not a story about Abraham. This is not a story about Isaac. This is a story about how you got saved. So it's very important you guys are understanding it. And if you've noticed, it's one story that's continuing from the start of Adam until the time that Christ comes. So I hope you don't see a disconnect. And the whole point of this class is to make you realize that it's one story. It's not like multiple stories. And sometimes when we talk about Moses and then we talk about Abraham, you think they're two separate, stories, and they're really not, right? They're the same story, just it's one long story. That's what it is. So from the time of Moses, I'm just gonna start there. They left Egypt. They were wandering around for 40 years because they messed up, and then finally Moses passes away. Joshua picks it up. Joshua, of course, he's God. Elects him to be their leader, and then he destroys the wall of Jericho. They get into the promised land. This is huge. They've been waiting for this promised land for 40 years, and now they have the opportunity to be inside. This is big. What's the first thing they do? They forget about God. Joshua passes away. They sin, and once they sin, God allows them to fall into their hands of their enemy, right? And once they fall into the hands of the enemy, they're like, oh no, we messed up. God, please, forgive us. And the guy is like, okay. And he gives them a judge. He gives them a leader. He gives them a military, like a chief, right? So then he would destroy the enemy, and then they're like, woohoo, we're saved, and they're happy. And then once that hero or that judge is dead, they start sinning again. And this cycle is repeated how many times? Yes?
16.
16 times. 16 times this happens. They do good, and then they forget about God. And then their enemies take over them as a punishment, and then they repent, and then they get a good leader, and of course they forget about God. This cycle is repeated 16 times. The story of Gideon, the story of Deborah, the story of Samuel, the story of Samson, all these names hopefully should kind of, oh yeah, I know. So these are the judges, okay? So that's where we left off last time. So the judges are that was happening 16 times. Now, the 16th and the last judge is called, his name is Samuel. So this is what happened. His mom is Hannah. Hannah is a spiritual lady. She's a lady that really believes in God and she trusts God, but there's one problem. She can't have a baby, right? And everybody else, all her neighbors, all her friends are making fun of her. Ha, you can't have a baby. And she's sad, right? So she goes to the sanctuary to pray. And this hurts her to the core. She's crying, right? And you ever prayed to God in a way that you just gave it everything you had, right? And you gave it 100%. And that's how she was praying. So much so that she couldn't even get a word out. She was talking to God, but her lips were moving, but her word, no words were coming out. And that's that true prayer. Because sometimes we have a tendency to say a lot, but we're really not saying anything at all, right? But with her, it was the opposite. She was praying in silence. But of course, her lips were moving because she was attempting to talk to God. Now, the priest at the time, his name is Eli. Eli comes out in the sanctuary, and he's looking at a lady doing this. Right? And he's like, oh, this lady's drunk. Like, oh, what is she doing? So she's like, oh, man, only if you knew the problems that I had. Like, I'm not drunk. I'm here because I'm praying to God. Like, I just want to have a baby. Like, this is all I want to do. And he's like, oh, man, my bad. Like, So he's like, go home. Like, don't worry. God is with you. Of course, she goes home in a few days. She's pregnant. She has a kid. His name is Samuel. Samuel, I'm getting through, by the way, side note, 2 books today. The 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel. There's a lot of stuff that happens in these 2 books. Like, a lot of stuff. There is no way in 40 minutes I can get through everything. So I'm going to skip a lot of material, just the stuff that you guys need to know so you don't lose it. So Samuel grows up. And back in Israel, their faith says, in the back of in your mind, while I'm telling you guys all this, remember that they just moved into this promised land. Like, that's very important to keep in the back of your mind. They moved into the promised land. So it's like, imagine like Ethiopians, like 50, 60 years after our parents migrated over here. So still like a new land, but imagine we took over America. Like, no more white people, So like we just took over it, and it's like a new land. So that's kind of the experience that they're having. So Samuel grows up, and like in the Israel culture, the first child you give it to God, especially if you promised. She did. She was a very spiritual lady. Hannah was his mother. So she said, she's gonna give it to the sanctuary. So she gave it to the sanctuary at Eli's house, right? So she was like, Samuel, good luck, and she. But it wasn't simply like that. Of course, she came, she visited him, she gave him clothes and all that stuff, and everything was good. So Samuel is growing up at whose house? Whose house? Eli's house.
Who's Eli?
Eli.
Is it Eli? Is it?
Eli no ngiri ba mare no yan nantana like ati sabi. Eli no me somehow I'm gonna continue saying it. Eli.
Eli's house.
Eli. Oh. Not like the animal. But so we together? We together? Okay. Eli's house. Who's growing up in there? Samuel. Xavier statue. That's shit. This was the easy part. Now, what's happening is there's a little problem. What happened is now Eli is the priest. Okay. I'm gonna call him the priest so I can avoid saying his name. So the priest has 2 kids that we know about, Phinehas and Ophnias. Now these kids are wicked. They're wicked, right? When I'm saying they're bad kids, I'm saying they're bad kids, like they're real bad. Remember, since he's a priest, inside his house, what's inside his house? Someone to take a guess. Every priest has what? Every priest. Altar. Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant inside his house. But not the replica, but the actual one, the same one that Moses built, right? This is huge. This is a big deal. Please, hell, you have something in your head. So they make a tent. So it's not like when I'm saying it wasn't in his house. It wasn't like, well, here's my bedroom, here's the living room, and here's the Ten Commandments. It wasn't like that. Of course, they have a tent, like, especially reserved for, the Ten Commandments. If you read Exodus 26, 27, 28, around that area, God is very clear about how he wants the sanctuary and everything built, right? So, we're to understand that the priest is abiding by that, and he has that secluded. Here's the reason why I'm bringing this up. The kids, Phinehas and Ophnias. Their pickup line when they talk to girls was, we have the 10 Commandments. And they would bring the girls like to the tent, not like in their house, whatever, to the tent in front of the commandment, and they would sleep with the girls, like in there, and they would defile it. I mean, these guys were wicked. They did not care. And their dad was, and here's the worst part. Their dad knew, and he didn't say anything. Their dad knew, and he just was like, "Oh, that's sad."
Eli?
You know, yeah, the
He turned his
Eli.
head? Eli turned his head?
Yeah, he turned his head. Yeah,
What were the kids, man?
Finas and Afnas.
Against who? Finas? Finas?
Read your Bible.
Asana.
It's in 1 Samuel. Should be around 2, 3, 4, somewhere around there.
Finas and Asana, right?
Finas and Afnas. Yeah. Please don't make me say it again. Okay. So this is what happened. So one night Samuel is, you know, he's living in the house. So he goes to sleep. He's going to sleep. Eli goes to sleep. Eli's an old man. The priest goes to sleep. So the priest is asleep, and then Samuel is asleep. Okay, and then he hears his name, Samuel. He's like, oh, okay, like the old man's calling me. So he goes up, and then you know he wakes him up. He's like, yeah, what's up? The priest is like, I didn't call your name, dude. Like, what are you doing? I'm trying to go to sleep. He's like, oh, my bad. Like, I'm crazy. So he goes to sleep. And then yet, in the dark, you know, everything is off. It's in the dark. He hears his name, Samuel. Oh, well, that's weird. So he's like, yeah, man, like, what do you want? Like, I'm trying to go to sleep. He didn't say it like that, but, you know, I would have. So the priest goes, I didn't call your name. Like, what are you doing? Right? He's like, man, that's weird. He goes, and of course, the third time it happens again. So this, you know, he's gone. He's like, yo, why are you calling my name? And the priest is like, I know what this is. God is calling you. The next time you hear your name, say, the Lord speak, for your servant listens. Understand what's happening here. Samuel's name is being called when? In the dark. God is calling Samuel when?
In the middle of the night.
In the middle of the night, in the dark. Darkness symbolizes a time when the spirit, like holiness, is gone. Darkness is a time when people have forgotten about God. And the time when wickedness is happening, darkness, God speaks. And yet Samuel hears him. And the time when the kids have forgotten about God, and the time when the priest himself is not taking responsibility for what he needs to do, God speaks. God, the light, is speaking to Samuel during the darkness. I hope you guys are making this connection. So Samuel goes back to sleep, and yet again he calls him. And this time he does what he's told. Speak, for your servant listens. God is like, we gotta talk, Samuel. Because I've been seeing some stuff, and this is not cool, right? Like, you know, I can handle a few things here and there, but the thing, man, it's like, these kids are tripping. He didn't say that. But you guys get the idea. And then, so God is like telling Samuel, like, these kids are in trouble. Like, and I know you're a kid, and you're probably not going to get everything I'm telling you. But you're about to be the leader. But these kids, they're in trouble. They're in trouble. So he's like, all right. Then, of course, you know, a few days pass by. And a side note, the Philistines are always in a state of war with the Israelites. They're always fighting with them, like all the time. I don't know why. They don't like them. I don't know what it is. So this is no different. But this is like a huge battle. There's a huge battle going on against the Israelites. So the Israelites get ready. They have like thousands and thousands and thousands of soldiers lined up. I mean, first of all, when the other cities, the nearby cities, hear the name of Israelites, they tremble. They're scared. Because they know their God is strong. They know about the God of Abraham, the God of Moses. They know about that. So anytime they're about to go to war with the Israelites, they tremble. They're scared. So, you know, they have a reputation. Now this time they have thousands and thousands of soldiers, the Israelites. They go to war. They go to battle with the Philistines. Guess what happens? They lose. They lose the battle. Now this is devastating to the Israelites. They're like crying, they're scared, they're like, what the heck happened? So all the elders, they come back and they're like, where did we go wrong? Like, how can we, the Israelites, like, we have a name to keep. You know, where did we go wrong? And then they're like, they start thinking, we know what it is. we need to take the Ten Commandments to the battlefield. Like, so God could be with us, right? That's the plan. So they get more soldiers. They get everybody together, and now this time they bring the Ten Commandments with them. Eli is scared. Right? So he's on his throne, he's sitting down, he's like, man, like, I hope this is good. This time, the kids of the priest, Phinehas and Ophnias, they go to war. They're front and center. The Philistines, they're in their tents when they hear that the Israelites are here. Not only are they here, they're here with the Ten Commandments. Woo! Woo! They're scared. They're like, oh man, like, let's just give up right now because we're going to lose. Like, this is not worth it. We're going to lose, right? They go to war. They go to battle. Guess what happens? The Israelites lose again. Not only do they lose, the kids of the priest, Phinehas and Ophnias, die. The wife of one of the kids was pregnant, and she gave birth during battle. And she was wounded, and she was about to die right after she gave birth. And the kid is like there, and like all the people are like, man, like this is sad. The mother is about to die, but at least name your child. Name what name are you going to give to your child? And she says Ichabod, and she calls him Ichabod. Ichabod means the grace of God has left Israel. The grace of God. the grace of God has left Israel. There's a huge point that we need to take away from this. God is always with us. But if we're consistently disappointing Him, if we're consistently in a state of sin, His grace will leave us. Not because technically that He's leaving us, but God in His very nature is righteous. He's holy. He cannot be around sin. So the more we sin, really, we're walking away from Him. The example that I like to give is if it's midnight, if it's dark, and the only room that's lit up is this room, right? And you decide to get out of this room and walk away, the further away you get, the darker it's going to be. The room is not walking away from you. You're walking away from the room. The more we sin, the more we forget about God, the more we're walking away from the sun, the light, God, the source, life, holy. We're walking away from Him. And the more we walk away from Him, His grace will leave us. But really, we're the ones leaving Him. Not only did the kids die, the Ten Commandments is lost. The Philistines get control of the Ten Commandments. Eli is in his throne. He's sitting down. One soldier runs up to tell him. Eli is like, oh man, I know this is not good, you know. And then the soldier's like, yo, I got some serious news. I hope you're ready for this. Like, tell me, like, what happened? He's like, we lost the war. He's like, man, I don't care about that. Like, tell me what else happened. He's like, your kids died. He was like, oh. But you know what? They sinned. They sinned and they got what they deserved. Right? Like they did. Right?
Samuel's telling her this?
No. Soldier.
Soldier's telling her.
And then he was like, tell me what happened to the Ten Commandments. And he said, we lost it. And when Eli heard this, he fell from his chair and died. The old man. Eli's dead. The Ten Commandments are lost. His kids are dead. Israel is not doing too hot right now. The Philistines, they bring over the Ten Commandments. They're like, woo, we took the Ten Commandments, right? And so they're excited, they're happy. So what they do is, they put the Ten Commandments inside a room where they used to keep all the idol worship, especially this one idol worship called Dagon.
Fish.
And so they keep the Ten Commandments there, they lock it, they're like, woo, let's go party. Yes, sir.
What's Dagon?
Dagon. It's like the idol worship they used to
like
pray
a
to.
fish, like a fish god or something like that.
Yeah.
They worship.
It was the god that they worship. It was like some idol thing. So they put it there, and they put the Ten Commandments next to it. They close the room, and then they leave. They're like, whoa, yeah, we beat the Israelites. They come back the next day, Dagon is on the floor.
Hey.
And the Ten Commandments is still up there. And people are like, oh, well, that's odd. Did you do that, man? No, did you do that? No, I didn't do that. That's pretty weird. It just fell. They're like, all right, but you're on the right track. You're very late.
I'm so sorry.
Okay. So then Dagon fell. So then they're like, yo, I didn't do that. Then they pick up Dagon, and then they're like, all right, man, that's pretty weird. So then they leave, right? They come back the next day, and maybe this is going to answer your question. They come back the next day, Dagon not only fell, but broke. It broke. They're like, yo, this is crazy, right? They're like, we don't want to keep the Ten Commandments. And then they're like, yo, it has to get out of Palestine. Like, they're afraid. They don't know what's going on. So they pass it from one city to the next to the next. The story is very long. And then, of course, they return the Tablet to its rightful owner, Israel. Now, this is what we celebrate, Tablet Zion, in November, December, or something. They didn't want it. Did you not hear what happened? they were afraid. They didn't know. Like, they were like this is too much for us. Okay, so so they returned it. Now the return of the tablets is celebrated like very big in the Ethiopian Orthodox Father Church. Please. In around September or November, somewhere around there, Tablet Zion. So the next time you guys hear that, you'll be like, oh, I know what this is, hopefully. So that's what happened. So the Ten Commandments is back. Now, there's a nation of Israel, they're happy, they're excited. Of course, remember, they always have this tendency to forget about God and to sin. Now, the Israelites, they're sitting down, they're like, we had the judges, been there, done that. We want a king. Like, you want a king? Like, what are you talking about? Now, in order to understand this, you have to understand the difference between a king and the judge. A judge is someone that is elected by God for a particular purpose, right? Right? Samson was elected specifically to destroy the Palestinians. Once he's done with that mission, he's done. Like, that's it. A king is there to rule over the entire country. And the king has authority over everything that happens inside that country, right? So it's really an attempt to get God out of the equation. It's really an attempt. It's not really, but it kind of is. And then usually the king, what happens? Once he has a kid, his kid is the king. And then once he has a king, his kid is a king, unless you have a coup, yeah.
Is the king elected by the people or by God?
By both. So usually it should be by God, but as we will learn, hopefully even next week, sometimes the people elect them. But the first one was definitely elected by God. Even though God was disappointed. He was hurt. He was like, I've been your king like this entire time. Like, I was with you, through like when you crossed the Red Sea and all that. I was with you, man. Like, what are you guys doing? And then, people were like, oh, my bad, but we kind of still want a king. He was like, all right, I'll give you a king. Samuel is upset too. Samuel, now he's an old man. He's an old man. And like, he's really, really upset. He's like, man, y'all tripping, man. Like, But he was like, that's fine. And then God tells him, like, okay, the person I sent to you is going to be the king. Okay? So Saul, he was like, man, a man by the name of Saul, I should say, was, he lost his donkey. He's a farmer. He's like, where's my donkey? And then he's walking around and he's like, David, stop laughing at me. So he goes to Samuel. He's like, I lost an animal. Have you seen it, right? Have you seen it? And Samuel is like, you the man I wanted to talk to. Come right quick, right? So he's like, you see this oil? And then he pours it on him. And then he's like, oh, by the way, you're a king now. And then, so he anoints him by the holy oil, and he tells him he's a king.
We're talking about Samuel?
Samuel anoints Saul to become the king.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna do this one more
No,
time.
no, no.
It's not that complicated. It's not. I could even say the names correctly. It's not that hard. Okay. Samuel. Okay, Saul. First, Saul. He had lost an animal. And he was looking for the animal. So he went to like look around it, and he came across Samuel. He was like, Samuel, have you seen my donkey? And then so of course Samuel was like, well, no, but I did see something. Come here real quick, right? And he tells him like, you're gonna be a king. Like, don't be shocked, okay? You're like the first king of Israel. And then he takes the oil and he anoints him. Okay, so he's a king. Okay, and a lot of things happen. Of course, he's presented before the people. And then he becomes the king. I gotta run through it. I can't like go through each step. So Saul, initially he's a humble man. Initially, he's good. But as time goes on, he gets a little like he forgets about God, right? Like I said, it's a new land. You guys got to remember that all the time. It's a new promised land. It's new for them. So there's like all the other cities. They're like, who the heck are these people? So they're always fighting with them, and they're in battle with everybody around them. And one time, Samuel is like, all right, well, we got a battle tomorrow. Here's the game plan. I'm gonna come, and because I'm the judge, I'll make the offering for God so that God is with us during this battle, right? Like, I will make the offering, and then we will go to war. Deal? Saul was like, no problem, I got you. He goes there, they're ready for battle, and the enemy is coming forward. Looks at Samuel, he didn't come. Like, oh, this is not good. So he's waiting, the enemy's coming closer, he doesn't know what to do. Saul is like, oh man, I can't wait any longer. Like, we're gonna lose, So he's like, you know what? I got this. Bring me the offering. So he makes the offering himself. Clearly not what they discussed. Clearly not what they did, right? Well, what God wanted either. So right when he finished the offering, guess who comes? Samuel. Like, what are you doing? Like, we talked about this. Why are you making the offering, especially when I told you not to do it? You disobeyed God. He was like, oh, my bad. But he didn't even think it was that much of a big deal. He went to war. He went to battle. Few battles later, I'm at 1 Samuel chapter 15 at this point. There was a city that was very evil. Very evil. And the king, for you guys to understand how evil they were, just for pleasure, like he would like kill pregnant women and like take their babies out of their stomach, like do some crazy stuff like that. So God was like, we gotta punish these. Like, these guys are just crazy. So he told them his mission is to go there and don't spare anything, kill everybody, everything that moves. That's it. Saul is like, I got this. He goes, and then he's doing whatever. He sees the king, right? And he's like, the king, like, okay, I'll let you go. He doesn't kill him, which is his orders from God. Not only that, he sees some animals along the way, and then he's like, hey, I could use these animals to make an offering, and he spares them. Later on, after the battle, Saul does exactly what he said he was going to do. He takes the animals, he's making an offering. Samuel hears what happens. Samuel not too happy. He's like, Saul, we need to talk. He's like, what's up, man? I'm a little busy right now, but what's going on? He's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm making an offering. What animal is this? The animal I got from the battlefield. Like, he doesn't think it's nothing. He doesn't think it's a problem. He's like, were you not told to kill everyone? He's like, I was, but I wanted to make these things an offering. And then Samuel is like, what are you not getting? To obey is better than sacrifice. If you guys, that's said a lot, but I don't know if people know it came from this specific Bible verse. To obey is better than sacrifice. A lot of time we run around saying, you know what, like I'm going to sacrifice this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. But sometimes God just wants us to obey. Like the sacrifice, that's good. Like doing stuff, that's good. But he just wants us to obey. Like, I'm going to do this for God. I'm going to do this for God. That's good. That's good. Like, I'm going to give my hours and my time and my energy for God. That's good. But are you obeying him? Like, don't try to do your own thing. And, you know, I'm not saying it's bad. But sometimes all that God wants you to do is
Okay.
to obey. And he couldn't obey. And Samuel, at this point, he was done. So he said, "Oh, no, I can't talk to you." And he walked away. And when he's walking away, Saul is like, oh man, he's serious. It's not like the other ones. So he grabs onto his garment, right? And then Samuel's walking away. And when he grabbed onto it, it split into two. And he said, you see this? This is a prophecy for your kingdom. Remember this, we're going to get into it next week. He says, this is a prophecy for your kingdom. Then, shortly afterward, God, of course, tells Samuel, he's like, the whole Saul thing is not working out clearly. I want you to go and anoint somebody else. Samuel goes to the house of David's dad, whoever he is, Jesse's house, and he anoints the youngest kid there, who is David. Not this guy, but David, right? So David is anointed king, but he's not active. His kinghood is not active, if that makes sense. So he's anointed. He knows he's about to be a king, but he's not acting as the king because Saul is still there. Now, here's what happens. David is a young man. He's pretty young. And one time there's war going on. So this is what's happening amongst the Palestinians. This is like the background of the battle. There are two mountains, right? On top of this are the Israelites. On top of this is the Philistines. I'm sorry. Here's the issue. If the Israelites try to attack them, they have to go down the mountain and come back up. By the time they come back up, guess what's going to happen? They're tired, they're going to throw stuff at them and all that stuff. If these guys come back down and try to come back up, the same thing is going to happen. Not a good look. They're stuck. They're there for days. So then, this tall man, I'm saying like 9 feet tall, that goes by the name of Goliath, gives a challenge to the Israelites. He's like, I'll make a deal with you. Here's the deal. Let's do a one-on-one fight. Let's go. You know, who wants to see me, right? He's like, this is the deal. If you beat me up or you kill me, my whole soldiers will surrender. That's it. But if I kill you, your soldiers have to surrender. There's the Israelites were 9 feet tall. This is not gonna work, right? And here comes David, you know, his dad sends him, and the story is very long, read it. His dad sends him to give some food to his brothers who happen to be in the battlefield. And then, you know, so he does that, and everybody's like, David, why are you here? David, why are you here? So they do that, and then on his way out, he happens to hear Goliath talking about God. He's like, what you say about my God? You know? And then he's like, I don't play that, man. So he's like, I'm going to fight him. And people are like, please, just sit down. No. So he's like, let me see the king. So he goes, he talks to Saul. Remember, the king is who? Who? Did I say that right?
Who?
Whatever, okay.
Not
Yeah.
who.
Yeah, no, who? Said who. So he sees Saul and he's like, I want to fight him. He's like, you ain't gonna fight nobody, man. Just sit down. He's like, no, I'm gonna fight him. I'm serious. He's like, all right, give him the armor and all the stuff that they're supposed to wear, the